Oh, hopefully this works. I've got too many windows open here. Too many windows open, so I gotta do a little stuff here. So give me a second here. What is this do? There we go. All right, well, there are not too many windows open, but for me to see what I'm doing. Good morning, by the way. I'm just doing a little pre-stream housekeeping, which I should have probably done before the stream started, but I kind of got tied up with some stuff. Excuse me. So I'm just trying to get that stuff done now, which means I'm trying to get my stuff. My hair is really messed up, and I didn't even run a comb through it really well before I got on stream. Which I should have, but that's all right. What am I doing? Well, let's see. Rearrange my windows here. I like to, you know how I like to have my windows rearranged so that I can see all the streamy goodness. Because not only does it help me see comments and such, but it also makes sure that I know that you're seeing what I want you to see and not just what I think you're seeing. And that means I have to get all of my correct windows open here and slid into the right spot. And there we go. All right, and Twitch is already silenced, which is good. And then I also have my speech chat open here. Let me make sure, let me unmute that so that I can make sure. There we go. All right. And the speech chat thing just helps me to hear if anybody talks in chat, I will be able to hear them. So hang on a second, let me switch back. There we go. So if you want to make a comment or say something in the chat, I actually have a speech to text window open now. I do that because I was not getting, why aren't you opening full screen here? I was not able to hear comments before. Well, I was just using tools and I couldn't obviously see the comments while I'm using the tools. So I've gone to this new thing where I've got a speech to chat, and if I get comments, I will be able to hear them in my chat, which is really nice. I'll be able to hear them myself because I will be, from using a tool or doing something away, I will put my headphones on, and that gives me an awareness of what's going on in the chat. And that way you don't think I'm ignoring you, and I can participate as well. So, because that was kind of one of the comments I got earlier, was like, it would be really nice if you actually, interacted with your chat when they actually come in. And I'm like, well, I don't know they're there because I'm using tools and I can't hear. So it was like, well, you could use this. I have these, they're not noise canceling, but they are kind of like shop type headphones. And so I've got these, and they have Bluetooth, and I have them usually hooked into my laptop here so that I can hear that stuff. I have regular AirPods, but they don't do a whole lot for blocking noise while I'm using table saws or band saws or having my vacuum running and things like that. They don't do a lot for my ear protection, which is the whole point of wearing them. So I've got these. These are isotunes, which I have smaller ones that are like in-ear isotunes, but I got these. They're not the best. They're okay. The actual function of them, the cups and the Bluetooth and everything else is fine. I don't like the little band up top. This is kind of hard, stiff rubber, and it actually, when you've worn them for a few minutes, it actually starts to press on your head a little bit, and it's not super comfortable. So isotunes, if you ever are watching this or listening, please put a pad up underneath the little head part here. Just a simple pad would be great. Doesn't have to be super comfy, but it's going to be more comfy than this hard rubber that has wires running underneath it. They're nice and stretchy and stuff, but come on, you can do better than that. Just a hard rubber pad. Let's see. All right, let's play catch up. I don't know where we left off on, what's today, Wednesday? I don't know where we left off on Monday, but I do know I put like another coat of finish on this. So this little tray right here, we've got another little fine coat of finish on it, and it's pretty much done. I just have to, I gotta put some feet on it, and I gotta prepare the little tile. I gotta make a tile to go in this one, and then I have the little plastic cups that go in there. I went on a hunt yesterday. I had to go out, and so, which I don't do a lot of. I don't get out in public very often. There may be a law against me being in public. I'm not sure. But I did go out yesterday, and while I was out, I tried to hunt down some Kamar finish, or Kamar Varnish, to put on top of the ceramic tiles. Hang on, I've got a tile over here. I didn't grab one. I should have, because I knew I was going to talk about this, and I grabbed the stuff that I sprayed on it, but I didn't grab the actual tile. So let me grab the tile, and I'll show you what I've got and what I'm kind of doing. And I think I've got another can that I want to show you as well in here, which I think is this one. Yep. So I did a lot of scouring on the interwebs and trying to find, I turn my little camera on here, trying to find the best way to finish this tile. So I hand painted this tile, kind of a really cool effect on here. I hand painted this with, hopefully my camera's showing up there. Let me see, I'm gonna switch over so I can see my camera. There we go. So I hand painted this tile using alcohol inks, and it looks really nice. It's kind of cool, little effect. And that goes into one of these trays like this, right? So it just fits in there. It's a nice little thing that you can put stuff on, serve things. It'll have little cups that you can have dips and stuff in, whatever. Just making it up as I go. But the thing about alcohol inks is that while they are not activated by water, if you get anything with a solvent or alcohol on it, this whole pattern, these colors will just completely run and smear and do stuff. So you need to top coat these things, and you have to be really careful with what you top coat them with, because apparently a lot of the sprays and such that you might use have some sort of a solvent in them. Like if I was to spray lacquer, well, lacquer has a solvent in it. That's what helps lacquer layers lay down one on top of each other and stuff. So you have to be careful. I know there's some people who use like a spray poly and stuff, but the general consensus on the internet is that the first coats should be made with this stuff. It's called Kamar Varnish. So it's a varnish finish. I'm not sure what Kamar is all about, but this is by and large the #1 recommendation for doing this stuff. So this is basically a spray for protecting oil, acrylic, and watercolor paintings. So if you actually do make a painting, a traditional acrylic or watercolor painting, this is the spray that you would put on there as a protective top coat that would keep like water or anything else from interacting with your artwork, kind of seals it in, makes it so that you can actually touch it, it won't smear or anything else. So this is the #1 thing to actually put on top of your watercolors and such, but it also works with the alcohol inks because it has no solvent in there. Non-yellowing protection, keeps a fresh from the palette look, acid-free, allows easy rework, free from impurities. Anyway, this stuff was a pain in the rear to find. I had looked up online where to buy this stuff. I tried to find it on Amazon, but I couldn't find it in anybody who was going to have it like without getting it like shipped to me by January 1st or something like that. So I was like, well, let me see if I can find it local. A couple of Walmarts had reported that they had stock, but I went to there, they did not. I went to Joann's Fabrics, said they had 4 cans in stock. I went to the Joann's Fabric, they didn't have 4 cans in stock. They didn't have any. So I was like, holy crud. So what I did do was I went around the corner from there and went to Hobby Lobby. Not a big Hobby Lobby fan, but sometimes you just gotta shop where you gotta shop, right? So I went to Hobby Lobby, and lo and behold, they actually had a can of Kamar Varnish. They're more expensive. One of the reasons I don't like Hobby Lobby they were like $2 to $3 more expensive for their Kamar Varnish than all the other sources. So basically they sell it for 10 bucks, everybody else sells it for $7. Thanks Hobby Lobby. Anyway, but they had it. So I got the Kamar Varnish. I sprayed 2 or 3 coats on here. And then the next step, so this is like a 3-step process for this stuff. When I first got into it, I was like, oh, you'll just spray some poly on it or something and I'll be fine. And every article and every video I watch is like, no, don't do that. You've got to do these steps to make it permanent and stuff. I was like, holy crap. Some people actually spend more time sealing in and protecting their artwork than they do actually creating the artwork, which in my case would definitely be true because it didn't take me long to make this. Anyway, the next step to actually preserving an alcohol-based painting. Now this is on ceramic, so it's a non-porous, and that's what you use alcohol inks are best at, is painting on non-porous surfaces, glass, ceramic, plastic. You can use it on a lot of different things, and it has a really cool effect to it, but it does not work really well on porous surfaces. You can use it on porous like paper and stuff, but it kind of soaks and spreads and does weird things and you don't get the same cool effect. So it's really best on non-porous items like this ceramic tile. One of the things about the colors in here are, I may get this wrong, these are pigment based, not, there's 2 different types of stain. Anyway, the type of color that they use in these will fade from UV exposure over time, and they will just become kind of like dull and not as crisp and vibrant and bright. So in order to protect your stuff and make it look just as good as the day you painted it, once you do the Kamar Varnish, you then go to a UV resistant clear coating. So I've got this stuff, which is also a Krylon. All this stuff is Krylon. So this is a UV resistant clear. And basically what you do is you put 3 coats of this on, 2 or 3 coats on, and this just, all it does is protect. It's a UV coating. This is a gloss, so it's a UV gloating gloss, a UV coating gloss coat on here. And I will probably do 2 or 3 coats of this, and I will sand, once I get a couple of coats on, I'll kind of hit it with some 220, sand it kind of nice and flat, spray another one on there. Finally, we're not done yet. Finally, you got this stuff, which is Krylon. It's triple thick crystal clear glaze. And you end up putting 2 or 3 coats of this on top. So you get this really nice glaze coat on top of everything. It's bright glass-like coating, super high gloss finish, non-firing glaze for bisque, plaster, and more. So easy push spray anyway tip. Okay, so anyway, finish it up with a clear glaze. That seems to be, as I said, the consensus in the art community and the internet and such on how to actually finish these. And had I known that, well, I might have still done it, but I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to get all these things to finish it. Now there is an option instead of the glaze. Some people said that what they will use is a clear coat automotive paint. I'm not sure who makes that, but you can find that in usually like Walmart and auto stores and things like that, which is basically an automotive, but it's a high heat, not just for cars, but a high heat automotive clear coat. And that's for spraying on things like engine blocks and stuff like that. It's made to resist super high temperatures. And if you were going to use this with, say, putting a hot mug of coffee on here or something like that, you don't want something that's going to melt your finish. So you can get the high temp, the high heat stuff, and that will protect. So I might try that on something just to see. I mean, if you were going to use one of these and make it into a trivet, you would definitely want something that was high heat. So you take stuff out of the oven, it's like 400 degrees and set it on there. It's not going to, melt your artwork. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. So I sprayed this with the Kamar already, and now it is ready to move on to the UV coating. And I still have 1 to paint. I have 2 of them finished. One of them I put the Kamar on, one of them I haven't done anything on, and one of them I haven't painted yet. So I need to do all of that. But I want to get this one all the way through the finishing process just so I could see how difficult it is and how long it's going to take. I think with most of these sprays that I've got over here, they state that they're okay to touch in 15 minutes and they're okay to use after 2 hours. So I've been spraying a coat, and then 15 minutes later, I'm going to set these over here to the side for a moment. 15 minutes later, I would come back and spray another coat. I did 3 coats of the Kamar Varnish. And hopefully that will be enough to make that protected until I move on to the next coat, which is the UV, and then the next coat, which is the glaze. And then hopefully it will look really super cool. I showed you this, right? This was the awl. I made a handle for the awl. So that was kind of fun. I did that the other day. That was nice, and I got that epoxied in. So this is now epoxied and ready for use, which is super nice to have an awl in my shop because, like I said before, I would have to get something like, if I was going to drill a hole and I wanted to set that hole or whatever, I would have to get like a nail or a screw and do something like that. And yeah, it's not really handy. So what else is going on? Oh, the other thing I started doing was making these things. So let me bring these over. I'm not going to be doing these on the stream just because a lot of it is time intensive, and really it's like watching paint dry for you all. Not really inspiring. Let me move this off. Don't cut, don't scratch. Just getting it on a nice flat surface. I don't know if I have a camera over here. Let me grab a camera and move it over here. Oh, I got to move my big heater out of the way. I actually had to drag out my propane heater this morning and fire it up in the shop because it was chilly. And oh, by the way, I walked outside just before I hopped on stream and I saw snowflakes. So there you go. First snowflakes of the season for me here in Northern Virginia. So I did see snowflakes. Now it's not snowing, they were just flakes. I think we're supposed to have snow tomorrow though, they said. Let's see if my camera's on, there we go. All right, so what I've got here, besides a big mess, is a, hang on, it's in clamps, I have to make room. Oh, there we go. So I have a cutting board. Let me loosen this. I can take these out of the clamps. So I made a cutting board out of maple. This is just solid maple, no alternating colors or anything else. It's just a maple board. And it's an end grain maple board, which is, so I'm going to set these aside. I need to hang them up, but I don't want to bore you with that. So just this maple board right here. Oh my God, oh my golly, shoot. It shifted a lot on me. I had this part come up on me. Should have put calls on it. Anyway, so I've got this maple board right here, which looks really nice, except for this part right here. It's gonna have to be thinner. I'm gonna have to thin it down. That doesn't make me happy. And my thought for this was that I want to do an inlay of a sewing machine silhouette on here. Let me get the tape off of these. And I want to make the inlay out of walnut, not just do an epoxy poured inlay. Because while that looks nice, it's not, if you do an epoxy inlay, it's not a functional cutting board. It's just decorative at that point in time. So I want this to be a functional cutting board. So it needs to have an inlay that is also made of end grain. And because if you use epoxy, what happens is if you cut on it, you're going to scratch it, and then it's going to look like poop. So nobody wants that, right? All right. Take this clamp off. So really what I had to do is create basically like two cutting boards. One with maple and one with walnut. The walnut will be the inlay, and the maple is going to be the main board, which is why it's larger. There we go. So this is the walnut, all cut up and needing to be flattened and everything else. But this is going to make the inlay portion of the cutting board. Now, all this is theoretical. I haven't ever done this. I haven't tried it. So will it work? Beats me. But we're going to give it a shot because most of this was kind of leftover wood from some other stuff I was doing. And I came up with the idea of doing the inlay. And I figured, you know, all I have to do is do some cutting on the saw and stick it in clamps. That's going to take up the most of the time. So anyway, we've got this board right here, which will be the main cutting board. We've got this board right here, which will serve as the template. Now, like I said, for you all to watch me do this would be really boring because I would do this on my CNC machine. Now, let me see if I can find the right window here. I'm going to switch you over to my web browser on here. Just have to see which one it is. It's the bottom one. Okay. Oh, I actually have a window for that. Duh. All right. I didn't even need to do that. So let me go over here and see if we have the right one set up here. And I'm going to pull a window over here on my browser so I can make sure that you're seeing what you need to see. Why is that so far behind? Anyway. Hang on, I'm looking, trying to find it. Where's all my windows? You know, sometimes. All right, that should be showing my web share like that. And you all should see my web share, hopefully, in just a moment. Tick tock, tick tock. All right. And I'm going to go over to my window here and pull this up. Okay, so this is my CNC program that I use for cutting things out. And this block right here on the right represents a three-dimensional view of like the cutting board. And then you can see the cutout right here, which is basically what we would call a pocket in CNC terminology. I can zoom in really careful and you can see that that is a cutout of a, let me zoom back out maybe, out. I'm doing this with my little wireless mouse and it's like, maybe. Okay, so there's the cutout. This over here on the left is a graphical depiction of the SVG file. And this would be the pocket that gets cut. So hollows out all of the gray area. That gets cut to like 0.20 inches deep, I think. And then over here, this would be the cutout for the walnut to go inside. And it's only, I think I have this going like a ½ inch deep or whatever. So what I would do is carve the pocket, then I would get the piece of walnut put in there, and then I would cut out I would carve into the walnut, I would carve this pattern in there, which should fit directly inside. Now I did this rough. I would have to go back and do this correctly because there is a project that you can pull up which is actually made for inlays, which creates all the files for you. Let me see which one that would be over here. I think under projects. I can't see from over here because I'm looking from across the room. But there's a project thing that you can actually open, and I apologize for not being here. That's shapes. I'm going to go back over here because it's just easier for me to see. Pro Design Library. There we go, apps. So if I go into apps, they actually have an app in here which does some of the figuring and the math and the setup for doing some of these things. So like right here, this would be for doing inlays. And if you click on this, then it says, yeah, you can basically create your inlay from this. I don't know what it's saying over top of that though. It has a little pop-up on there. What does that say? It says, please select the shape first. Oh, so basically what I would do is come over, before I do this, I would come back to this first one. I would collect and select that shape. I have a shape selected. I don't know why it says that. And then go to project. We'll actually go to here and Inlay Generator. There we go. So there's my Inlay Generator, and you can set the bit size to the bit that you need. This is actually too large of a bit. I would need a 16th, which is, I don't know what the 16th of an inch is. This is the one thing that really frustrates me about the inventable stuff, is that some of the stuff is in imperial measurements using fractions, like inches. And then you go to things like your bit sizes. Your bit sizes are not in decimals. They are in fractions, like a 16th, an eighth, a quarter, right? But then when you come into something like this, it's like, oh, what's your bit size? Is it 0.125? Well, that's an eighth of an inch, right? So they don't have consistency between their stuff here, which is really kind of frustrating at times, I would say. So I need 0.0625, I think. 0.0625, enter. And that gives me the little bobbin holder on top. If I use a very fine bit, it'll give me the little bobbin holder up on top. Anyway, that will allow me to generate the necessary cuts for doing an inlay. And yeah, so that's that. So I will experiment with this. I will use scraps and do the pocket carve and stuff. Now this carve, the pocket carve itself would take, I'm going to do a 2-bit. So that would be, let me go back to this one for a second. So the, oh, come on. Really? You're going to do that to me now? Okay. Everything's like furtzing out on me here. All right, let me go back over here. See, oh, geez, I have my stuff set up and it's not switching. Hang on a second. I got to restart my Stream Decky thing here. Okay, can we go back to webcam on, please? Thank you. There we go. Now I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, so I'm going to do the cut with 2 bits. If I did it with a 1/16 of an inch bit, which is really nice for getting the detail work and stuff, but for carving out a huge pocket, even though it's only like 0.2 inches deep, that would take like 4 hours to carve that pocket. It would be a crazy amount of time. So what I'll do is I'll do this in two cuts with a on the pocket part, right? I will cut that with a 1/4 inch bit to remove the bulk of the material, and then a 1/16 inch bit to do the fine work around the edges. And it'll come back and do all of the fine stuff, and it'll look really nice. Then what I will do is I will cut the inlay portion in the walnut will get cut with just that 1/16 inch bit. So it's going to cut the outside profile, and it will use the 1/16, so I get all the details going around the edges. Once that's cut, this is much thicker than what I'm going to be cutting. And the whole idea to that is that I will make the inlay on here, and then I will resaw this, and the inlay will pop out, and then I can pop it back in. So yeah, so that's my thought process on doing this. I'm going to test it That's why I'm not going to waste your time, because I've got to do several iterations of this thing. I will show you, I think I can show you this. Let me see if I can show you this. I have to go back into, I think I can go into here. Let me see if I go to this one and then I go to, let me see, oh, that's web share. I don't think you'll see it on this one. I think I have to go to window share on here. I don't think it's going to show that. Is it going to show that? No, it's still showing the window. I wanted to show you how I got to that. So what I did was, in order to get, I tried to find a really good silhouette online, and I couldn't find one. Let me close this out so you can see this silhouette I'm talking about on here. I tried to find a really good one, but they were difficult to find. And I'm going to go to this one. And I don't know if that's going to show up for you or not. Let me go to here and see if that's going to show on your screen. Is that going to show on your screen? Let's see. Anyway, I took a sewing machine. I don't know if that's going to show up or not. It's supposed to, but there we go. Okay. I set this up in my studio, and I just basically backlit a white background behind it. I just popped my flashes behind this thing and turned that into basically a silhouette. And then I took that into Photoshop, and in Photoshop I actually did a trace around the entire thing, and with the pen tool, and came up with that. So that's basically where this whole thing started, was a photograph, and then I traced it. Like I said, I couldn't find a really nice file online. I tried searching sewing machine, silhouette, whatever, and they were all kind of like stylized and funky and artsy and stuff, but they didn't really represent an actual Singer machine that I wanted to show. So I said, you know what, the heck with it, I'll make my own. And that's what I did. So I made my own, and it looks pretty good, but I have no idea how this is going to cut out. So I may just totally destroy this thing. Like I said, I'm going to try this with some scrap wood. I might just, try cutting this out on MDF first or something else and see how it works and how they fit together. It's up in the air. I don't know. I've never done an inlay like this. I've always done it on a solid face of wood. So we'll see how that works out. But that's kind of my thought process on this. And hopefully we are back to seeing just regular stuff on screen now. And anyway, so that is kind of where that stands. So that's kind of one of those off-camera projects that I'm working on. And it's, like I said, it's to show you what I'm doing would be, it'd be okay if I made a video, because then I could edit out all of the super boring stuff, like me sanding this flat and sanding this side flat and sanding this one flat and then running it for an hour and a half on a CNC machine and doing the same thing to this. You can see where that goes. If I'd made a video, I could edit it down and probably have the whole thing covered in about 5 minutes. But for you to watch on live stream would be really super boring, and I'm not going to do that. But I am going to set these aside because I will get to these later. Like I said, this is just something I wanted to try. It's not for a client. It's not for anybody in particular. It's just something I wanted to do, because I had the woods and I wanted to make it happen. All right. Now, I'm going to just clean a little space here. So pardon me while I do just a little housekeeping. Okay, well, I just threw that on the floor, so that really wasn't exactly what I had in mind, but it worked. Thankfully, it landed on my power strip down there and did not shut off the computer, because that would have been sad. Very sad. Okay, I've got these two things I need to put over here. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is grab my cherry slab. This is the main event, so to speak, for today. Oh, and by the way, today's live stream will be short, because I know nobody really gives a crap but me, But today is the release of the brand new Warzone map and for Call of Duty, and my son and I are avid Call of Duty people. We love playing Call of Duty and we love playing Warzone, and there's a new map that just came out after 2 years and we are super excited. So we're going to be playing that today, and it releases at 1 o'clock. So actually it releases at noon, which is in like 25 minutes. But I'll be ending my stream a little early today because I'm going to be hopping on and playing some Call of Duty, which if you don't know, you don't know. But anyway, this is my very cool cherry slab. Now I'm going to pick this thing up. It's heavy, it's large, and I don't know that I have a lot of room for it up here at the moment because I got things in the way. I'm going to move this over here, and that gives me room to kind of slide it forward here. So just to give you a view here, this is my cherry slab. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful cherry slab. It's a crotch figure in this thing, is gorgeous. See if you can see it better over here. So you can see all of this beautiful crotch figure in here. This is going to be the top of the table. I kind of assessed that. You can see that there are some cracks in here. There's some large cracks through here. These are voids. I can actually see down through, I can actually see underneath to my table underneath through one of these cracks. So what I'm going to do with this, my plan, it's heavy, is to put in a couple of bow ties here because I don't want these cracks spreading. So I'm going to put a couple of bow ties in. I have to figure out where I want the bow ties to go. There's also a knot here that I might put a bow tie in right here. And then I'm going to epoxy fill this thing. I'm also going to trim it. So right here, this section in the back is going to get trimmed off. I already have a line on here designating where I want to cut this off. I've got a line at the other end down here designating where I'm going to cut this off. I'm not going to do that right now. I will wait and do that later. I'll just use my track saw and do that. And then basically this thing's just going to get super sanded and flattened. And yeah. Now this side on the bottom, I have not, flip it over here. I have not clean sanded this one. So you could probably see these scallop marks in here. And that just comes from how I flatten this. I use my flattening sled and a flattening bit, which is a large bit with, I don't know which one I use to flatten this one. I think I've upgraded my flattening bit since I've actually done this. I'll show you what I have now. So if I was to get a new one, I have a blade that looks like this for my router, or not a blade, but a bit. So it looks like this. So you can see that large bit, I keep it in here because it's just a pain to, this is my flattening router right here. It's just a Porter cable, but it's nice and hefty. And I also have a collet extension on here, which is kind of key to using this, is to get this to be able to extend out even further from this base plate. So I have a collet extension on here. That's why I don't really take it off. I just leave it on here. But anyway, so this, whatever bit I use to flatten this one, as I made passes, it just kind of left ever so slight marks on here, little ridges, and those get sanded down a couple of methods. One is to use a belt sander, which I have a belt sander. It's a crappy belt sander, but it's a belt sander nonetheless. And then the other method is to use my very large 6-inch Bosch sander, like this, with like a 60 grit pad on there. That keeps a very flat face on here because I have like a medium pad, which keeps it, it's soft, but it's pretty firm in terms of keeping it flat. Oh crud, hang on a second. I have to go and do something really quick. I'll be right back. Give me just 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to tend to some family business, namely my son, who was not up or barely up, and he has a dentist appointment in like 20 minutes. I'm like, dude, come on. Come on, dude. Get yourself up. Anyway, so what I need to do is get these standing out. Now this will be the bottom. I've kind of determined that this is going to be the bottom. And I've got, you know, when I get ready to do some epoxy work, I will tape up this whole seam here and pour my epoxy. Although I have heard a couple different things. So let me know if you've heard anything different. I'm trying to figure out if it's smarter for me to pour the epoxy from the bottom or from the top. Because I think if I pour it from the bottom, it will go all the way through, or if I do my first pour from the bottom, these cracks go all the way through, so it would work its way all the way down through and then be nice and flat on the bottom. And then when I flip it over, then I don't care if bubbles rise out of here and stuff, because the bubbles will rise up and the epoxy will settle down and it should be nice and flat on the bottom. And then I could do any fills on the other side. So I have seen people say that. I don't have a ton of epoxy pour experience. I've done a little bit, and most of it's for inlay work. And so I haven't really done, this isn't an epoxy table by any stretch of the imagination, but I do want to fill this void, because this void will create problems for the owner of the table, in that things could get in there, they get dusty, there's no way to clean it out, you know, blah, blah, blah. So my thought is that I will fill that with epoxy. It'll be black. I'm not going to do anything fancy. It's just going to be black epoxy in there. I will get a pretty good sized epoxy mix. I'm probably going to have to spend like $100 on epoxy to do this. But the other question is, should I do the epoxy first and then do the butterflies, or should I do the butterflies first, or the, you know, the bow ties, or whatever you want to call them? Should I do those first and then do the epoxy filling in around those? Those are the big questions I have. And I'm not sure which is the right way really to proceed from there. So if anybody has any suggestions or experience in that, feel free to send it my way, because I would love to know. Now, one thing, if you'll notice on this side right here, while this is a live edge, this has a bark on the edge. And people are like, oh, keep the bark, keep the bark. You can't keep the bark. First of all, you'd have to seal the bark in with, like, I don't know, a thick layer of something, polyurethane or something. You'd have to seal this bark in, right? The other problem is there's no way to seal between where the bark is and where the actual wood is, the wood grain right here. And you can see it's a defined line where that bark meets with the actual board itself. And the problem is that as this table sheds moisture, this bond between this bark and this board become more brittle and decay, and to the point where the bark will actually fall off. And you don't want something that you finished falling off your table. So the bark will be removed, and it will be more of a traditional kind of a live edge, which looks, flip it over to come back to this side, which looks more like this. And this will get sanded smooth, but this has had all the bark removed from this edge. There's a little bit more down at the end down here, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this around. Oh, it's just light enough that I can still sort of manage to work it around here. And I'm going to work on getting the last of this bark off of here. And that should be pretty easy. That I could just use a chisel and just kind of pop this stuff off. And you can see that this stuff kind of wants to fall off. That's the thing about this stuff, is that it's kind of wanting to fall off already. And this part right in here, so this part right here is what would separate over time from the wood itself. and create a really loose bond. And you can see this stuff actually has like layers. So there's this layer right here which kind of bonds it to the tree itself, and then the actual protective bark. But like I said, over time that bark wants to come off, and then you're kind of in a bad place. So I'm just going to kind of chip, there you go. So look at that whole giant piece. And this is what I'm talking about is, oh, if I can pick it up off the ground, you get big pieces like this that once you lose that bond, which you can't epoxy this or anything else from the inside when you're making this, you know, you could only put a layer of poly or something on the outside. Well, this is still going to loosen over time. And so basically this could just pop off your table. That would stink. Not great. All right, that was the last piece over here. So now I'm going to flip this over and work on this side. This actually has a lot more bark on it because I have not done anything to this end. Let me see if I can just work it from here. And I know it's not a great, what did I just do? I did something over here. I think I hit my mouse, hang on. Boop. Cancel. There we go. Anywho, what was I saying? Oh, so I'm going to try to start working on this bark and get all this bark cleaned off on this side. Once I have the bark cleaned up, then I can come back and start hitting this with some rough sandpaper and just kind of get it smooth to the point where it is much more usable. I'm going to try to drive this, just tap this in and get these off in big chunks. And it just kind of wants to break free here, like that. So just breaking big pieces of bark off here. I am going to try to separate it out from the main sapwood, because it's just, the more I take off, the less sanding I have to do here. Some people will use a wire wheel to clean up the edges. There's a variety of tools that you can use for this. There's, I think, trying to remember who, Porter Cable makes a thing that has like these brushes that you can clean. I can't remember what they call it, a refinisher or something like that, which does a pretty good, it has like a nylon brush, which does a pretty good job of cleaning up stuff like this. Just trying to get some of these rougher edges off of here. Some people will use a draw knife on this stuff. They'll just kind of use a draw board knife and kind of, a draw board knife kind of looks like a long blade with a handle on each side, and then you just draw it across your wood. So that's what a draw board knife is. I do not have one of those. I do have chisels, and I can just pop this stuff off with chisels. And if you hit it in the right spot, you can get big pieces to just pop right off. So there's a big piece right there. Like over here. And I'm just trying to get this chisel right in that line between where the bark adheres to this sapwood right here. It's pretty defined. So if you hit it just right, you get big pieces that separate out. Just like that. Now I'm not getting all of it. Sometimes there's stuff left at the bottom, but usually if you get it right in that right little line, you can usually get this stuff to separate out pretty easily, and then you can just pop it off. And like I said, the adhesion between this and the actual sapwood usually is a little, it's usually a little weak at this time. This thing's been sitting around for a couple of years. Had this been a fresh slab right off a tree, this would be a lot harder to take off. But this stuff's been sitting on here for a couple of years now, just waiting for me to come and do this. And it is coming off pretty easy. comes off, like I said, in big chunks. And then all I have to do is go back and clean these edges off. Trying not to get chisel marks into the slab itself. I'm just trying to get it between the bark and the sapwood, so I don't want to have to clean up any chisel marks out of the side. This is a little bit more stubborn than others. Why we use a mallet. And I am making a mess here. That's what a vacuum's for. There we go. Oh, there we go. Get that whole piece off of there. So that big long piece broke off. There's still some to clean up off of here though. Oh. There we go. So that was pretty much all of the bark off of this. And what I might do is just hit that with some really rough sandpaper, like some 60 or 80 grit, just to kind of clean off some of the fibers and stuff off of there, because they will get in the way. Now there is a piece of bark down in this end down here. Let me move this around. So right down here is some bark, but this thing is going to get cut right here. So I'm going to lose this whole section down here. I mean, I'd like to keep that, but I don't know, let's look at this again. I marked these a while ago. Hang on a second. Before I do that, I'm going to bring the vacuum over here and just clean up some of this stuff. But I drew these lines, I don't know, a couple of months ago or so. And maybe I just want to re-look at where I'm planning on carving this table up and maybe change my mind. All right. And that's the thing about something like this, is that there are no plans for this. It's basically kind of free form and whatever I want to do with it. But I think I want to look at this end again and maybe revisit where I was going to cut the lines for this. Now the line down here is easy. That's a straight across line down there, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. And then this line I put way up here. Come over here so you can see this. So this line is way up here. If I chose to do it a different way, like a different line, let me find a, you know what? Let me grab this ruler right here. It's kind of a nice flat, maybe, if I can grab it. Nice straight edge. So if I chose to include some of that bark down here, what I'm looking at is a line that would come. I wouldn't be able to get the whole thing and keep it square, but let's see what we get here. I might be able to include some of this area down here. It would make it a little bit longer. Not a lot, but a little bit longer. So I'm just gonna draw this line down here. I'm keeping it parallel to the first line that I drew because I like that. It's nice and squared up. And so what you can see is I will get a little bit of the sapwood right here from the crotch. And not only the sapwood, because I was going to basically eliminate all the sapwood down here. This would keep this little bit of sapwood and this little bit of live edge right there. I don't know, what do you think? Should I lose the live edge down here, or should I keep the live edge down here? You can see why it's taken me so long to get to this point, because I get decision paralysis when it comes to what I want to do down here. But let me get rid of this bark. This bark's a little tougher down here. This is tough bark down here. So I'm just going to kind of chip this stuff out. There we go. There we go. So this part's coming out now. I'm not trying to clean out the wood. I just want to clean out the bark section of it here. Which is really stubborn right here. I might get a wire wheel or something to clean this, or a flat brush or something to clean this out, because this is really super tough right here. Just because I think of where it was in the fibers of the wood and everything was all compressed right in this area. Anyway, so what do you think? If I cut it off, it would basically end, and I would have this little section on the end. What do you think? Would that look cool? You like that? Or do you like just cut off right there and starting from right here? I'm kind of now gravitating to this one. I kind of thinking this is kind of the way to go. And yeah. Okay. Well, shoot. That just kind of throws things off at me a little bit here. I got to get some of this other stuff off of here because there's still some more of this softer stuff that needs to come off. And so I'm just going to kind of try to pry some of this stuff out of here and get it cleaned up a little bit more. Still a little bit of this bark stuff in here. This part is holding on more so than the other sections. There we go. And this would all need to be cleaned out. Ah, don't do that. Don't cut in. There we go. Yeah, this is a little bit more kind of a gnarly little mess in here. So I think it holds on to this section a little bit more. Now, that being said, I don't need to clean all of this out because it would only cut off this last little part right here. So only this little divot part right here would really need to be cleaned out. That. Like that. And I do have a flap disc that I can use to kind of clean some of this stuff out with. See if I can find one of those for you here. I think I have some flat, oh, would be in my sander drawer. In my sandpaper drawer here, I think. Yeah, so I've got like these discs right here. So these are flap discs. This one's an 80 grit. This one's a 60 grit. And these are really nice for contours and stuff like that. But you can also get them in here and just kind of roughly clean in as it's obviously spinning in the grinder. But kind of makes fast work of these things. You can get these in different grits and stuff. So I might gently use that along the edge. But I also, on these long edges, I think I'm just going to hit those immediately with some sandpaper on I just cleaned this one, so I'm going to do this one first. I'm going to use some sandpaper on a sanding pad, and that might be a little easier to start with. You're thinking, what would be really easy is if you actually could take this off the end of your table. It would be, if that was an option for me right now. But I do have these sanding discs, these little mouse pads, and if I put like a 60 grit on here or something, which let me see if I got a 60 grit. I think I got some 60 grit paper in here somewhere. There's some 80. We got a 60 in here somewhere. 120. Let me dig. Oh my gosh, so much sandpaper around here. 150. I know I've got some. Somewhere in my big pile of poop. My sanding drawer is getting a little unorganized here. What do I got? 120, 120. There's 220. There's 80. You can tell me I don't have any 60s left? Well, that's just messed up. Oh, here's a 60. I'll just use this one. Maybe it's only had one left. Anyway, there we go. There's a 60. I'm just going to put that on here. I'm not going to actually use the sander. I'm just going to do this by hand and just kind of work some of this rough areas off of here. Because some of this stuff is really soft, and then when you get to the actual sapwood, it's much harder. So I'm just kind of trying to remove some of this soft material, and I can come back with the chisel on areas where I can definitely see that it's material I can remove with the chisel. Because like I said, I'm not trying to remove the sapwood from here. I'm just trying to remove anything that was basically like, it's kind of like the bond between there we go. The bond between the bark and the sapwood. Normally you think, oh, this would be really easy. You just put some legs on here, you clean it up, and you're good to go. But, you know, if you want to do a good job and you want to try to fetch top dollar for your stuff, it probably makes sense to pay attention to the details. So all I'm doing here is hitting this edge. I've got the sanding pad with 60 grit on here. This is really rough, but I'm just trying to take off any loose material on here now. And leave behind just what would be the sapwood on here. But you still keep that characteristic of the live edge, which is really cool. And anywhere, like I said, where it's soft, I'm going to come back with my chisel and just kind of try to quickly remove that material, because it's not part of the sapwood. It's just kind of that intermediate layer between sapwood and bark that just sort of gets in the way sometimes. And this will get a lot more finishing before it's said and done, but this is just kind of helping me get to that intermediate stuff off of here. You know, it'd probably help if I took this clamp off the table and then I could swing it over a little bit more. That would be helpful. And the mouse can go over here. And then, actually, hang on a second, doing a little rearranging. Move my fence. Just gonna move my fence over and get it out of the way a little bit. And then I have room to swing this, and I'm gonna lower my table saw blade so it doesn't hit anything. Then we've got room. There we go. All right, now we've got room. Okay, hang on. Hold on. So now I've got room that I can slide this around like this and really get to the areas that I want to get to. I could also, my table's a little higher than my bench. So if I wanted to, I could slide this up on here like this and have a little bit more room to work with. But then you get a little tipping. I could wedge something under here. Kind of, maybe. There we go. Just so you can sort of see what I'm working with here. Now I've got a little bit more hanging off the edge. Now this is a sawn edge right here. So this was cut with a saw. I would imagine when they went to saw the tree up, there were two large branches that went that way. And so they just they just cut these one off right here, and they cut one off right over here. So those will get sanded down flat and smooth. Because they are not live edge. All right. There was a network error. Please click here to reload your player. I'm not sure why that was a network error. But that was on Twitch, so not too worried about it. All right. And there are some sharp edges along these, so I'm just going to gently round those over just so I don't catch a hand on them. Just around here a little bit. And do the underside. Like I said, not the final round over. I'm just trying not to catch my hand on any splinters or anything here. But that looks pretty good for a live edge. So let me go ahead and pull that out here so you can see what it looks like. I'll flip it around so I can work the other side. And you can see this side. So this is what we've cleaned off all through here. And this is all, like I said, this is all live edge now, but this will get a lot more sanding and a lot more work done to it. But for right now, it's actually pretty good. You know what I'm going to do is flip this over because, oh shoot, after I hit my garage door opener, actually it was just the garage door, whatever you call that thing. I'm going to flip it this way because it's easier for me to get to this live edge. You know what would be easier for me to do? It would be easier if I pushed my fence all the way down to the other end of my table down here. There we go. Smarter, not harder. Now I have room over here. There we go. That's better. It would be nice if I actually had my whole table cleared off here. That'd make life a lot easier, but you know, beggars and choosers and all those things. But yeah, this is going to take a lot of cleaning. Like I said, I'm just running to 60 just to kind of get that preliminary crud off of here and then find areas where I can use my chisel and clean the soft stuff off of here. Because really your live edge should only be hard wood. Could be that first layer of sapwood, but it should still be pretty hard. So if you've got soft material, that is not your live edge. And I've got a bit of that over here. So I'm just using the chisel. Trying not to be aggressive with the chisel though, because like I said, I don't want to chip the live edge board out. Just want to get that soft stuff off of here. So I'm going to run it with the bevel against the edge and kind of tip it back until I'm just barely scraping with that edge. It's probably good that my chisel needs to be sharpened too, so it's not super sharp. It was, but I've since used it a bit. So I do have a chunk in the table right here too, which I will probably grind that down, but it's going to be on the underside. So I'll take one of those flap sealers or flap sanders and just kind of grind this area down until it kind of comes in and naturally contours right there, just to get rid of that section. The other thing I need to do is clean out as much as I can the little garbagey stuff that's inside of here. There's little bits of material. There's pieces of the stuff you don't want anything in here that's going to really break free. And so if you can and get rid of any of this stuff in here. It's kind of making things not clean. And get rid of it. And like I said, all this is going to get filled with black, so you're not going to see it, but you do want it to be cleaned out in here. And that is kind of a task, because this is all hardwood in here. This isn't where, you know, you had bark or anything. It's just kind of accumulated crud over time. And so I'm going to have to basically use probably my compressed air to blow some of this stuff out of here. And try to get all these wood fibers and dust and dirt and grime out of here the best I can. And then maybe clean up this crack right here. There we go, like that. So just because it's going to get filled anyway, so I'm going to clean up this crack so it's a little bit smoother. It's just a really thin edge of wood right here too. It's not like this is a big thick piece of wood that I'm carving on. It's a really thin edge, and I'm just smoothing that out. So it has a nice appearance to it, I would say. And then I can hit it with a little sandpaper and get that. But anyway, back to my live edge down here. I was removing softwood, and I've got some more right here that I found. I mean, you could get all this off with the sandpaper, but honestly, it's just faster to do it with a chisel. And if you do happen to scrape a little bit of the sapwood, it's no big deal because it'll all get smoothed out in the end. Do like these little mouse pad sanders because they're just, I mean, they're flat, but they're just soft enough that you can get a little bit of forming and shaping with them. But I am going to need like a wire wheel, like a wire brush or something on my drill to come in here and get into some of these grooves and stuff, which is also another heavily used method of cleaning up the sapwood areas, is a wire brush. Like I said, that Porter cable tool actually has this big wire brush thing on there. Restorer, I think is what's called, the Porter cable restorer. I don't have one, and I'm not going to spend 180 bucks to buy one just to do this. If I was doing a lot of this though, I would absolutely have one of those. What is it, Blacktail Studio, who does some amazing tables. He does pretty much almost all tables and such. From slabs, and he uses one of those restorers all the time. But sometimes you have to be able to justify the cost, right? It's like a drum sander. Drum sander would be awesome for doing things like, you know, the cutting boards and stuff. But if you do one cutting board a year, does it really justify that cost? Would you use it for anything else? Yeah. I know in my case, I probably wouldn't use it that much. I'm just trying to work the sandpaper into some of these grooves on the edge and clean out some of that softer material in there, because the chisel's flat and it just can't get into some of these areas. And that's where a brush really comes in handy, like a round wire brush wheel. Now that's an expense I will eat that expense. I got to go buy one. Whoa. Because it's just something that's handy to have anyway. This is looking really nice. And the 60 was probably a good choice to start with. Because you want to be able to remove some material. And I mean, it's fairly aggressive, but this thing's so big, I'm not going to like alter the shape of it or anything. And it's still early in the process anyway, so. So did we come up with the answer yet? Is it bow ties and then epoxy, or epoxy then bow ties? I need to figure that out, because that's kind of where I'm looking at my next my next area on this thing is, you know, am I going to do the bow ties, or am I going to do the epoxy? Because it really depends, and it really is going to make a difference on how I proceed. I've got a really nice piece of walnut here that would fit really well for bow ties. It's very thick, has nice straight grain in here, which is what you want. And basically you just, for those of you who are like, what's a bow tie? There's nobody saying that, right? There's not a single person here asking me what a bow tie is. I guarantee it. But anyway, if you don't know, let me demonstrate. Maybe. I lost my pencil, so maybe not. Don't know where my pencil is. I got a little pencil here. Hang on a second, I'll show you bow tie. So let's see, I'll draw a big one on here. And this is just a rough drawing. So just to kind of figure this out, I'm just going to use a pin here, and I'm just going to rough this bow tie out for you so you can see what it would look like. But the purpose of the bow tie is to give strength. That's kind of crooked. That's not straight at all, Jeff. What the heck? Where'd you learn how to draw, son? There we go. The purpose of the bow tie is to give strength to areas of the wood that have cracked, and you're just kind of securing them so they don't have an opportunity to crack more, because that would not be good after your table is done. You don't want it cracking anymore. You want it to be stabilized. So a bow tie uses basically geometry. You're creating these reverse wedges like this. And because these are angled out like this, you put that across a crack. So if you imagine this cut out and put across this crack right here, as that wood tries to pull apart, it's actually held in place because these wedges don't let that wood separate anymore. And that's the whole purpose of a bow tie. You could be really fancy with bow ties. You could be really, I have a template, which makes it really super easy to do. Now the template, I can do these on, I can actually cut bow ties on my CNC machine if I want them to be larger. But like you can see, so I have a template for bow ties, right? And they're all, well, can you see that? Get the light shining. There you go. So you can see all these bow ties on here. And really what you would do is you would figure out how large you want that bow tie to be. And then you put it down on your surface here. Now see, my stuff is, this is not straight anymore. So I'm going to probably have to resurface this because you notice how I have tipping right there? That's not good. So since I have actually flattened this, it has changed. This area right here has slid and changed a little bit, which happens, you know, when you remove material from wood. But this is actually sitting up a little higher than this piece. So I'm gonna have to reflatten this again. Why did that, oh, sorry. I laid that on top. Anyway, I'm gonna have to reflatten this again, just ever so slightly. to make sure that I'm getting a super flat surface, which is a little disappointing. I didn't realize I was going to have to do that. But because it's already flattened, it shouldn't take me long to use my router and flatten this thing, put it in the sled. I got to see the other side now. But anyway, that's the whole thing with the bow ties, is you're just stabilizing cracks and making sure that they don't get any larger or that they don't become big cracks. So you could put this anywhere you see like a hairline crack on something, like right here on this, basically there's what looks to be almost like a knot, but there's a ring right here, and there is a little crack right here. This has potential for opening up over time. I would probably put a bow tie in here, maybe a small one, but I would probably put a bow tie in here to prevent this from opening up over time. The other thing we have on the bottom here is we have some checking in the bottom here. Checking's not great, and that's why I think I went for the higher cut on here, is to get rid of the checking. So that might be a thing where I'm gonna cut this, even though I'd said, hey, let's include that sapwood. I just noticed that on the bottom, I have a bunch of checking here, which means that checking would show up on the end. And checking is basically when you get cracks that kind of radiate to the end of the board and they look crappy. So you want nice clean ends. So I will probably end up cutting this off again and get rid of those checkings. I have some splits, which I can't do anything about. But anyway, let me look over here and see how flat this is on this side. So this side, still pretty flat over here. A little high on the edges. A little high on the edges right here. I might just, but it's flat enough for me to put this side down on my flattening jig and flatten that other side. So I think that's what I'll end up doing. This side's already been sanded and smooth because I got all excited when I got my new Bosch sander and just went to town on this thing, and it looks pretty spiffy. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with that original line to get rid of that checking, because that, I do recall now that that was one of the things that when I looked at the bottom of this slab, there's a lot of, let me see if I can show you here. I don't know if you can see it, but in the bottom, especially right here, you can look, it's easy to see. Look at all that checking and see how high up that checking goes? It goes to like right here. So there's no way I really want to include any of that checking because there's no way to really seal that. You can try to fill with epoxy and stuff, but it's really tough. So you're better if you have a crack, it's easier to seal than something like, or a gap is easier to seal than something like this where it's just probably going to continue checking over time. Whereas if you cut it off, then you're nice and clean and you don't have to worry about it. Then your wood gets sealed with your finish and you really shouldn't have any problems in the future. There's one large crack right here. I'm not worried about this one. I will fill this with epoxy. It's wide enough to fill with epoxy. Then you've got the gaping hole right here, which once again, filled with epoxy. So bow ties, what I'm looking at, I really need to find my pencil. I really want my pencil. Where's my pencil? Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm going to use these as my bow ties right here and just draw bow ties on here because I would like to just kind of visualize how I want this to work with bow ties on here. And so I'm just using the template to draw some bow ties and establish where I want these things to go. Now I will probably not use these. I'm probably going to cut skinnier, longer ones. These are a little chunky. And the way this works is I've got a bit that actually goes out and would ride on a bearing on the inside of this template, and that gives me the inside cut, and then you just kind of clear away it all with your router, and then you take the bearing off, you put this on your piece of wood that you want to use as your bow tie, and then you run the bearing, you run it without the bearing, and it just runs along the collar without the bearing and cuts a little bit larger on here, and that gives you the piece that gets inset into here. The problem is, you know, how deep you can cut. You have to be able to cut deep enough to make this worthwhile. If it's decorative, you can go really shallow, like 1/4 of an inch, but that's not really functional. So for something like this, where that crack runs pretty deep, I want to go 1/2 inch deep because I want that to have that force, right? I want to be able to hold that in place and really work as a mechanical brace against the cracking. And just 1/4 of an inch isn't going to be enough of a brace. 1/2 of an inch thick is what you want. The other thing is you want the grain on your bow ties to be running perpendicular to the grain on the wood. So the wood on here is running this way along this crack. I want my grain running this way on the bow tie, which gives strength to the bow tie. And like I said, once again, gives that mechanical lock, that hold to keep that wood from spreading further. So like this is a really nice piece. This is all straight grain right here. I mean, this is definitely 1/4 sawn section of wood right here. And that's exactly what I want to use for those bow ties because I want maximum strength. I'm just right now just kind of visualizing where I want to put them. And I would probably put one down here, and it would have to be pretty large. And this is why I'm wondering if it wouldn't be better to fill this with epoxy first, because I've got some of these are pretty big voids that I would have to be spanning. And that might be hard to clear away just because of the voids. Whereas if I fill this with epoxy, it's going to be a nice flat surface and it'd be really easy to go in there and cut out. I've just never done the routing on an epoxy section, and plus you have to use, when you're doing it without a template, you need to use chisels and get right on an edge line and everything else, and it really, I don't know. I'm going to do some research on that before I really get into this. I'll probably run a small one right here in the middle. And I'm just looking at all the areas that would receive bow ties. So I would probably do one here and then 3 along here. And then I don't know that I would need one here. I think that's it for the bow ties. I don't think I would need any more bow ties on here. Save the, I would have the 1, 2, 3 along here. And then one small one here. I don't think I need one here. So I think that's what I would need for bow ties. I really, really wish, and I might send a comment out to the Blacktail Studio dude and see if I can get an answer from him. Maybe I'll go to one of his videos and throw a comment on there and see if he responds back, because he actually has a consulting service. I don't want to pay just to ask one question, though. It's like, I mean, I get it, but I'd rather throw a comment on his video and see if he responds and say, hey, do you do epoxy and then bow ties, or bow ties then epoxy? That's an easy answer. I don't know if I want to pay like $50 or $100 for a consultation for something that's that easy to answer for someone who does this all the time. Anywho, so I would probably find some more wood. This is actually pretty thick. I could actually get, how thick is this? I think this is over 1 inch thick. And I could get a couple of bow ties out of here. Yeah, so this is 1.2 inches thick. I can get at least 2 bow ties out of here. The other thing I could do is, if I have a piece of it somewhere, I think I do, is I could alternate these. So I could do, if I'm going to do 3 of them, I could do a walnut, a maple, and a walnut. What do you think of that? Like alternating colors. And then maybe do a little maple up here. So I would have dark, light, dark. The cherry is kind of an intermediate color. It would not, it kind of stays, it's going to stay about this shade. So if you look at this sapwood right here, right, that's kind of like about the, well, you can't see the sapwood really well, can you? If you look at the sapwood along the edge, that's about the color that the maple would be. And then, you know, the walnut obviously is this color, and the walnut would get darker when you put finish on it too. So it would, you'd have basically 3 contrasting woods. You'd have the cherry, and then you would have the the walnut and the cherry and the maple. That's an interesting idea too. And I could just cut the bow ties out and place them on here. I could just do some bow tie cuts. I think I have some scrap and just do some cuts of some bow ties. I actually do have a piece of, I've got a piece of maple right there that I could use to cut a bow tie because it's slender enough. I can't get big bow ties out of this, I don't think. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I think it's just a little narrow for a bow tie for using this template. I have used the templates. I do like the template. It's just, I don't know. They've got rounded corners because you're going around the inside radius of a corner here. So getting nice, sharp, crisp corners is not something you're going to get using the templates. And I really think I would like some nice, crisp, sharp corners for doing that. You know. All right. You know what I'm going to do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Since I'm just sitting here hemming and hawing, I did say in the description that I was just going to sit around and scratch my head and try to figure out what to do next. So if you read the description, at least on Facebook and YouTube, you know that I'm staying true to my live stream description, which is just me sitting around scratching my head trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. But I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim these edges off. And it just gives me some point of reference to work with and maybe make things a little nicer for you all to look at. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Because I need to, all right, I'm going to rearrange some things. I'm going to set the slab down. I'm going to rearrange my life just a little bit because I'm going to use my, come over here. I'm going to use my table over here to do these cutoffs with. And I'm going to use my my Whoozits, my Wachahuzits. That would be my track saw. For those of you who don't know what a Wachahuzit is, which nobody knows. I just made that up. Sounds like a place in Mississippi. Yeah, I was down there in Wachahuzits. Okay, not to disparage anybody in Mississippi, because, you know, it's a lovely place in places. Oh, I also have this large piece of walnut right here. So if I want, I can get a lot of, and this is all pretty much, with the exception of this little, from here on over, from here to here, this is all straight grain, all quarter sawn. So I can get some really, really nice bow ties out of there. And it's nice and thick, so that's not going to be an issue. So I got that going for me. All right, what time is it? 12:30. We've got time to do this. We got time. All right, I'm going to take this, set it up on here, just like this. And I need to move all of these clamps because they're all in the way. All these clamps are in my way. Stop it. And then I might actually clamp this down to the table here, but track saw is pretty nice. You don't really need to do a lot with a track saw in terms of clamping things down. But now I can slide this off the back here and move this. Slide this off here, set my track on here. The only thing about my track saw is that I wish I had shorter tracks. The tracks I have two of them. They're really nice, but they're really long. And I wish I had a shorter track. I know Festool makes a short track. I do not have a Festool. I have a Triton, and the track is really long. It's also really freaking dirty because it's kind of sitting back there. So let me clean this off real quick. Okay, so it sits back behind my my saw, my compound miter saw, so you can imagine how freaking dirty it gets. Anyway, let me make sure that I've got right there and right there. So yeah, I've got plenty of room here to do this, and I can actually move this down this way a little bit. Let me grab my track saw. You may not have ever seen my track saw. I don't use it very often because I don't break down a lot of stuff, but when you want precise cuts, you really want something that is going to give you that ability. So there's my Triton track saw, and I actually have track saw clamps. Track saw clamps are very awesome. I got this whole thing as a kit directly from Triton. They were at the woodworking show, which was really cool. Anyway, I'm going to slide one of these way down here, just so I can lock this on the underside of the table. And I'm going to slide one under here. Maybe. There we go. And then move this out a little bit. Let me get this lined up on here and see if I can get these clamps on here. Where am I going to cut this thing? Where's my line? Oh, sorry, wrong edge. This line is right here. So this is an easy one. You get that edge lined up. Now the nice thing about track saw is it has a little rubber lip that you cut. The first time you use it, you cut that little rubber lip with your saw, and what that does is it gives you an exact measurement of where your saw is going to cut. And then from then on, you just lay the line of that little rubber edge on your cut line, and it's perfectly aligned every single time. So that is really nice. I think I need to come out just a little bit more here. There we go. Let me get this one clamped up. And the under clamps are really nice because you can slide it right under the board, and they're just like gripper clamps. But now my track, I know a lot of people will use these and they don't clamp them down, which is fine if you're doing plywood and stuff. This has rubber pads on the bottom and it usually stays put. But when you're doing a shorter board like this, you really want to make sure that your track is not going to move. Now this is where I really wish I had a shorter one, because if I had one that was only about this long, that would make it a lot easier to use. Really nice. Anyway, I don't, so stop bitching and moaning and crying. Let me unravel the cord. This does have a very nice long cord, which is very handy. If you're cutting large material, you don't want to be bound up by a short cord. So the beauty of a track saw is you've got a track, your saw fits into the track, kind of clicks in, and oops, if I can get mine to click in here. There we go. It clicks in, goes like this. The saw blade moves down this way, so it's actually cutting reverse. See if I can lower this blade down a little bit. So the blade tips into your work, but the blade runs, instead of most saws run this way, you know, they're running, I don't know, clockwise. This one goes counterclockwise. So it's pulling up, and it's a really nice job. Now I want to see, I'm not going to cut this all the way through because I want to do a couple of cuts. It's just going to be cleaner that way. So I'm going to set my depth stop here. Let me come over here and just set my depth to do about halfway to start with. That's the one thing about a track saw, is that they are super clean and precise, but they're not super powerful. And hello. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to set this to about a ½ inch right now. And so I've just got a depth stop. So as I plunge this, I'm only going to get about a ½ inch cut, maybe a little bit more. And then I'll come through and make a second pass. But that's something you want to kind of pay attention to, is your depth of cut. If you try to cut the whole thing at once, it's probably not going to work. There we go. So make a couple of passes. You'll get a much better edge that way. And mine has like an anti-kickback kind of thing where it's like, mine won't go backwards. So I kind of have to figure out where I want to start this thing. And go like this. There we go. All right. And then the other thing I can do is put dust protection on here. Kind of a pain, but let me get the dust protection on here. Where did I put my screwdriver? Because this thing does make a mess. I say dust protection. It has a dust chute out the back, and it does shoot a lot of dust and stuff out the back because it's carrying all that dirt up into the well right here. So as the dirt comes up over the top, if you've got extraction up top here, it'll suck that out and give you a much cleaner cut. You're not going to carry all that stuff down inside here. So let me get this locked onto here. And I need to remember to turn off my heater because I don't want to blow my circuit here. I'm going to hook up my dust collection. I need the little funnel part that goes in here. What did I do with that? You know, some days, there it is. Some days I am my own worst enemy. Okay, and I'm not going to plug this into that cord. I'm going to use a different cord on a different circuit just so that I can try to keep things under control here. I'm going to turn this heater off too because I don't want to blow anything out. All right, noise protection, check. Let me give you a better camera angle, check. Because you don't have a good one right now. Let me give you a better camera angle here. That's pretty good. So I'm going to get tight on this for you so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. That's nice and tight. That gives you a good tight angle to look at. So yeah, this is a Triton track saw. I've had it for, I don't know, a couple of years. And like I said, I don't use it a lot, but when I do, it's very handy. So I'm going to make one cut, and then what I'm going to do is come back, adjust my depth of cut setting, make the other cut, and it should be enough to get this edge cleaned off here. All right, now what I'm going to do, and the other nice thing about this is like if I wanted to cut a bevel on this, I actually have the ability to tilt this blade and cut a bevel, and you can control how deep that bevel goes by where you line your track up and stuff. So that's really nice. Let me see how deep this is so I can actually get an accurate depth of cut now. Because I'm about halfway through. This is about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and lower this down to full depth here. Should give me my full depth. And let's go ahead and finish this cut. See how that looks. Really? Okay, well, I'm a little surprised. I thought I was going to get all the way through, but apparently I did not. Let me see. Let me grab a ruler here, see how much further we've got to go here. So I'm going to just stick this ruler in the slot here. You know, that did not cut 1.5 inches. It says 1.5 inches, but it was not 1.5 inches. So I really don't have much more to go. I'm going to lower this back down just a little bit more, and then we'll finish this cut off here. Come on, down here. There you go. That should be enough. All right, one last time. I do like the fact that this has anti-kickback on this saw. It's one of the features about it that I really liked. But there's so many track saws out there now that if you want a track saw, just look around. You'll find one that suits all of your desires and needs. Hello. Okay, well, interesting enough, even though I did that in 3 cuts, that's really smooth along there. I mean, there's saw marks. It definitely need to be, you know, cleaned up, but that's pretty smooth. I'm not gonna lie, that's nice. I like it. All right, I'm gonna take the saw off, set it down here for a moment. And the nice thing also about track saw, look, there's no blade right here. Once you take it off, it's retracted up into here. It makes things a lot safer for you. So it's a very safe saw alternative. And there are people who do 90% of their stuff with just a saw, just a track saw. I am working on the slab. I finally got it out and decided to do a little something to it. So basically all I've decided to do, I cleaned off all of the live edge. Not the live edge, well, I cleaned all the bark off of the live edge, and I'm just getting it cut down to a usable, without smacking into the ceiling, to a usable size here, so that my sides are all, oh, here, I didn't show you here. So here's that edge we just cut right there. And that's really nice and clean. So that's a nice clean edge. And we're gonna go and cut this edge off. And like I said, I was thinking of keeping this, this part of the crotch right here, but because I've got all of this checking and it actually goes up into this part of the wood, I'm just gonna get rid of it all. I didn't want to. I was on the fence about it, but honestly, it's the best way to go to get a nice clean cut. All right, I'm going to put my line back on here, get this all lined up. So yeah, track saw, it's not something that everybody's going to want to invest in. Let me turn my, there we go. Now I can hear you through my headphones. So it's not an investment that everybody wants to make, but I'll tell you what, if you mill up a lot of, I won't say mill, if you cut a lot of plywood and large sheet goods and things like that, or if you really need really straight, exact lines over long stretches, like you can see how long this is, and I can actually connect this one and the other one that's the same size. So I don't even know how long this thing is. How long is this? Yeah, it's like almost 5 feet long. So I could actually have a track that is almost 10 feet long by connecting this track and my other track together and make it a super long cut. So that's where track saws are super, super handy. And like I said, I've got these little things underneath, so they're nice. Well, thank you. I appreciate the fact that it's looking good. I haven't done too much to it yet. But this is just such a beautiful piece of wood anyway that I really want to take my time on this thing. All right, so let me ask you a question since you're in here. I'm going to get your opinion on this. So I've got a couple of voids in here that I'm gonna do bow ties on here because I got some voids. Oh, geez. They're more apparent on the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At least 8 checks just on this side right here. Too many. Too many for me to worry about. The checks, not really. So there'll still be one crack up here. There's a large check up in here and a couple little things. This one kind of extends up in, but most of the small checking will be gone. It'll be nice and clean. So I'm not worried about that. I did have some big, so here's talking about stabilizing. I'm going to put bow ties in here. And so let me get your opinion. If you were going to do this, I'm going to do an epoxy fill because there's some very big voids in here. So I'm going to do a black epoxy fill. So bow ties first and then epoxy, or epoxy first and then bow ties? What's your opinion? Because I'm still trying to figure out which way I should do that. And I don't have an answer quite yet. So if you have an opinion, please share. Because I am going to epoxy fill. Like I've got a big giant void right here, big crack. And it needs to be done, but I'm also going to use bow ties so I can stabilize all these things. All right, I need to raise this up. But like I said, I'm just trying to figure out, is it better to do bow ties first? Why is this thing such a pain to raise up here? So I'm trying to figure out, should I do the epoxy pour first and then cut the bow ties? Or do the bow ties and then the epoxy pour will go around the bow ties. And the bow ties are going to be thick. They're going to be like a ½ inch thick. All right, let me cut this one off. I'm going to do 2 cuts, maybe 3 cuts on this end. And then this side will be nice and squared up and ready to roll here. So I've used epoxy for doing inlays, where the epoxy is the actual inlay material. And I've used epoxy for some small cracks and stuff, but not anything as large as this crack is in here. And that's kind of where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna need to do something. And I gotta figure out what my order of operation should be for that, because it's gonna need to be, I'm going to need both things. I'm just not sure which one should come first. It's a chicken and egg thing. It's the epoxy and the bow tie. It's my little take on chicken and egg. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to do a little bit more research, and I'm going to reach out to some people who do this more often than I do. Yeah, so I've done that as well, but usually the cracks I do are not big voids. They're not big, wide open, gaping cracks, which these are. So these span a very large area, and that's where my concern is. It needs to be filled because it's gonna be a coffee table. I don't want to have areas where dust and dirt and crud can get in there. So I want it to be nice and flat. So that's why I'm going that way with it, with the epoxy fill. But I'm gonna have to do bow ties because even filling with epoxy, there's a chance for those cracks to spread, so you've got to stabilize them with bow ties. There's just no way ways around it. So, and I've done bow ties too, but like you said, usually it's because there's a crack, not because there's a gaping hole. So. Ta-da! Well, that's my question. I mean, epoxy does stay, and it will adhere. I mean, that's not a problem so much as I think it's the cutting the epoxy, and that's where my issue comes in, or my question. Ooh, look at that! Snap that right off. A couple of pieces just broke right off of here, and that's where some of those big checks were. Yeah, I don't know where that one. Oh, like that. So that had some checking right here, and you can see when it fell, it snapped off. And there was another big piece right here that had a big check on it, and that check snapped right off. So, yay! I'm gonna keep this because I'm a wood rat and I just can't get rid of scrap. But that's actually, I might be able to have some usable wood out of that. It's a big, nice, fat piece of cherry, so I'll use that for something. Let me see what my cut looked like here. Okay, so nice clean cut all on the end down here. A little bit right there. There's a little check in the end of this one, but it's just one check. And like I said, that, like you had mentioned, I can stabilize with CA glue. And I'm not really worried about that. I'll pinch my finger. Get down there. There we go. Okay, come on. Oh, we did again. So I can stabilize, like one small check is not a big deal and not a concern for me, but the large checks, those bothered me enough that I had to cut those out. But I have some really pretty, I've got lots of beautiful wood here to use. Like I've got this big piece of walnut right here, and this is all quarter sawn, so that's all super straight grain right there. So I can use all of this area right here, and it's really thick, so I can get 3 or 4 bow ties out of here. Well, that's the other question. So, hey buddy, that was the other question, was am I going to use, because I have a router jig and I have these. I'm not really happy with these though. Does the epoxy cut well and stay attached to the wood when you cut? Yes, the epoxy cuts fine, but I don't know how the epoxy chisels. And if I hand cut, so instead of using my template, if I hand cut, which I kind of was leaning towards hand cutting, because I want nice crisp corners. If I hand cut them, then yeah. See, you're just right in my head, aren't you? So if I hand cut them, I'm gonna have nice crisp corners, which is kind of what I'm leaning for. And I think I would want something a little more narrow, because when you use this, right, you get rounded corners because you're using a bearing and you don't have a choice. But if I hand cut them, I don't know how well a chisel would interact with that epoxy to make those, to get those things done, which is why I'm thinking I would probably need to do the bow ties first. That's my general thought consensus on that. Because I'm right there with you. I think that if I do use a chisel to really kind of define the edge of the bow tie and get those corners nice, that I might chance cracking the epoxy, which would be tragic. We wouldn't want that. Ooh, that looks really nice. I like that. That turned out really well. Just a little bit of burn right here, but I'll sand that out. And I might do a bevel on the bottom of these too. I might bevel these, which would look kind of nice too. Now the only thing I need to do is clean these edges up. These were cut with a mill saw, so these are not great, but I can clean those probably with a hand plane, and maybe I'll hand plane those down probably, and then clean them up with sandpaper. Anyway, that is my my track saw. Track saw, great tool. If you don't have one, I highly recommend. If you can afford one and if you have the need for it, they are fantastic. Like I said, I have a Triton, but they come in all flavors. Festool obviously is the one that most people think of, but there are so many so many places and companies that are doing these things now. You can get one without spending, you know, a couple of grand on one. So shop around, see what suits your need if you're going to get one. Oh yeah, definitely I'm definitely testing everything I do on this before I actually get it done. And if I'm going to hand cut, I'm going to make a jig to cut my bow ties too. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp with you. Bow ties first. I think that's probably the way to go. But anyway, all right. Well, you know what? What time is it? 1 o'clock. I'm actually running a short stream today because it is, as I mentioned in the beginning, you weren't here, but today is the release of the new Call of Duty Warzone map, and I'm going to go play with my son. So we've been waiting for this for a long time, and I just wanted to get something done on here. I think you're right though. I think I'm going to go bow ties first, and before I do that, I'm going to throw this back in my flattening jig, which may or may not happen sometime soon, because I flattened this once, but it has shifted in the year or two since I flattened it. So this is not flat right here. It jiggles, and I need this to be flat before I do bow ties in it. The top's pretty flat, but I want to flatten this. It won't take long for me to reflatten this. I don't want to lose a lot of thickness, but I do need these to be kind of on the same plane, because if I'm going to put legs across here and everything else, I really need this to be stable and flat and flush. So I'm going to go do that next. I think that'll be my next project with this, is to reflatten it, which, like I said, shouldn't take long. I have a really nice flattening bit now, and I'm not taking much material off, but I just do need to get this down to size. And then I will check the flatness. This side is pretty flat. It stayed pretty stable. But you can see these big cracks right here. I mean, this is a big crack that runs up through here. I'm thinking I'm going to put 1, 2, 3 bow ties on there, and then 1 bow tie across this little crack right there. Pew pew. There'll be a lot of pew pew. A lot of pew pew happening today. Anyway, so yeah, bow ties, I'll definitely do some test cuts. I might make a jig for cutting the bow ties so they'll all be kind of the same size and the same angles and everything. Because I'm thinking I want to do some hand cutting on the bow ties. And they're going to be thick too. They're going to be like 1/2 inch thick. So wood does move. And you know what? The fact that it moves means you got to keep it from moving more than it wants to move. So that's why those things are awesome. It has moved. I mean, and the other thing is, because I took so much wood off, it was bound to shift over time. I just need to get these things stabilized now, because these cracks are going to keep getting bigger, and it's going to shift up into the wood to the point where it's going to split the whole table. So I really need to get those bow ties in there soon. So I think that's probably my next, and I think you're right, bow ties first. And then once we get the bow ties, the other thing that some people do is they'll do some bow ties on the bottom just to stabilize the heck out of it, and you won't see them. So they're hidden bow ties, which don't need to be as pretty. And if that's the case, I might just use this, my template. The only thing with the template is that these bow ties need to be deep, like 1/2 inch thick, in order to give them the stability to hold that wood together. A 1/4 inch bow tie isn't enough, in my opinion. I think I need something about 1/2 inch thick to really beef this thing up and really keep it from splitting. So I might do a couple of bow ties on the bottom and then do some decorative ones up top. Anyway, so much to think about. So many options. But it's a beautiful table. It's got beautiful feathered crotch figure, and it's going to be gorgeous when it's done. And I'm going to have walnut legs on it. I've already decided I'm going to use walnut, not this, but you know, some walnut for the legs. So I'm going to have like a, it's in my head. Hopefully soon it'll be on here. But anyway, I'm going to head out. I'll be back on Friday. Thanks for stopping in. and I will let you know if I had a good time going pew pew. And hopefully, I think maybe, depending, it's supposed to snow tomorrow. I may or may not be able to drag this out in my driveway. I don't like to do the flattening in my shop because it just makes a dirty mess everywhere. So if it's not too terribly cold, I'll take this out and put it in my flattening jig tomorrow and just get this flattened down. And then maybe we can cut some bow ties on Friday. That would be kind of cool. At least do some tests. So anyway, kind of the game plan. Thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. Come back and see me on Friday, and we'll see where I get to from here. All right, take care. See you soon.